Hi, it's Stuart again from Wayward Music. Just going to introduce you to playing the bass tone on the cajon. A lot of people look at the drum, see a big face and think, well, the middle is going to be the best area for producing the bass. Well, the problem with that, as I'll talk about in another video, is that when you start playing too low down here, what you're going to do is to affect your posture. And that's a dangerous thing, because if you play in the wrong posture for a long time, you can produce back problems and hip problems and everything else. So the area of the drum that we actually play is really about the top 6 inches. It's in this bit and just about as far as your hands will go down. In reality, we're usually in this sort of area. The bass tone can be produced anywhere along the drum, and there are different ways for doing this. I'm just going to do one or two basics to show you. The traditional way of producing the bass tone is to hold your hand flat, so you have a nice flat playing surface, and that simply strikes the drum. Now, a lot of people play in the middle here, where this logo is, and that's because this sort of area is what we often call the sweet spot of the drum. So if we tap gently, just using those 2 fingers, around here, you probably can't hear that very well, but actually just moving around this area, you can find the area of the drum that produces the most bass with least effort. Because you're playing with your hands, often for long periods of time, you want to be able to create as much sound as possible with this without damaging your hands. So if you're able to play in that sweet spot area, first of all with the straight hand, just let your hand hit it and bounce off. You get a nice solid bass tone. Some people like to mute the drum, and this is another technique, again playing with the flat hand. Simply hit it and almost push your hand onto the drum and leave it there momentarily so it mutes it more. And that actually produces a slightly more controlled or muted sound. The only problem with playing and pushing your hand in is if you're playing fast, then it becomes more difficult to move your hand quickly to get it to the other areas onto the drum for the other notes. So the traditional bass note is played middle of the cajon with a flat hand. Now, because we're often playing other notes, I personally find that there's another way of making a bass note which is great, produces lots of bass with not lots of effort. And what I do is I use this very, very slightly cupped hand, almost if you're playing congas, the hand is almost flat, but it's very, very slight. You can see it's like a slight cupping here in the middle. And if you play maybe not quite as much bass, but actually when you're playing that against the high note, then it's still very distinct. So you can play with a flat hand, or you can play with a cup hand. Now, again, this whole area will produce bass. So some players actually don't like moving the hands very far because they tend to just play with the hands in one place. And so for them, the bass note will be played nearer the edge. Again, both of those techniques that I've used before, the flat hand and the cupped hand, will produce a nice bass tone. What you will find is that playing a bass tone in this outer area, so there or there, also can produce a little bit more of the background snare buzz. So if you want a really totally clean, or as clean as you can get, bass tone, sometimes playing in the middle gets rid of any snare buzz if you're not bothered about a little bit of background snare buzz, which to be honest rarely gets heard anyway. Then play at the edge. Okay, so those are the basic bass strokes that you can play, and what we're going to do next is to move on to the high tones.